maybe let's kind of talk about the holy grails here, which is that programmability and scripting, right? I think most people out there in the crypto world know that Bitcoin has native script limitations for a variety of reasons. A lot of this was kind of security of Bitcoin early on. For a long time, other cryptocurrencies kind of purported to solve that by, building new blockchains with new scripting languages. Of course, Ethereum, famous for the EVM and Solidity and things like that. So how does Arc get us to something like programmability and scripting with Bitcoin? Because that's been a holy grail for a long time.
Yeah, well, the neat trick that we use is kind of like what we refer to as emulating, which is basically we create an environment where using the core foundation of the ARC protocol, we create this off-chain environment that's a little familiar in a way, or resembles almost what rollups are. So rollups are popular, very popular scaling solution on things like Ethereum, and the way that rollups work really is, again, it execute off-chain transactions and periodically create sort of a checkpoint on chain on the main layer one that kind of inscribes, if you will, or commit, if you will, the balances of all of the off-chain users onto the L1, giving them finality guarantees that you would expect out of just using normally the layer one. Now, the decision that we've taken with Arkade, once we sort of rounded up all of these concepts and realized that the ARC protocol applied very well to this mechanism, well, we decided to extend the normal regular payment transfer capabilities of ARC into what we call Arkade Script, which is eventually its own version of a virtual machine. What's different with Arkade Script as a virtual machine than the Ethereum virtual machine is that we preserve the Bitcoin UTXO model. And we think that's very important for a large number of reasons. Some of them are a little too technical, perhaps, for a general mainstream audience. But the interesting thing is it really introduces a unique scaling pathway that wasn't available before, where, we've seen a whole crop of new Bitcoin layer 2 solutions and side chains that effectively are kind of like feel like a little bit of a reheated copycats of Ethereum, where they have some sort of bridge mechanism. And that bridge allows users to move their Bitcoin onto this different layer being effectively another blockchain, and that blockchain supporting, Ethereum-style smart contracts and the Ethereum virtual machine. Whereas the design that we've taken with Arkade Script, the virtual machine, and what we call the virtual mempool is that we don't actually require the use of a bridge. And bridges are notoriously kind of insecure. They're probably the largest amount of coins that's been lost really in all of the DeFi and Web3 ecosystem over the last 5+ years has been because of compromises of bridge, very sophisticated attacks by North Korea notably, where they're able to affect, because bridges in most cases rely on some sort of multi-sig threshold system, where the moment you start having access or compromising a couple of independent actors that have access to those keys, then you're able to kind of wholesale steal the entire lot of money that's committed by users. And so we think that this approach has been kind of like notoriously, again, like I said, insecure and proven very difficult and complex to implement. You look at things like BitVM, where attempting to do something similar on Bitcoin, and still to this day, there's a lot of iteration, there's a lot of research that is ongoing about different techniques required to kind of like strike the right balance of security and economic efficiency with BitVM. Whereas something like Arkade requires no sort of like fancy zero knowledge proofs and all kinds of like this exoteric almost cryptography that these other systems use. We basically use very conventional pre-signed transactions. We use the Taproot upgrade that made it to Bitcoin in a couple of years ago, and we use that to kind of create conditional spending pathways between a server and the clients, and everyone connects in kind of like a hub and spoke manner to this server, this operator, and this allows you again to have a unilateral spending exit. So closely resembles the security model of Lightning, where you have no third-party dependence on your ability to claim your money on chain, but it also allows for collaborative spending path where using the operator as kind of like the intermediary between yourself and every other user in that system are able again to execute these off-chain operations. And to tie the loop here, well, Arkade script is our opportunity to kind of use basic Bitcoin script fundamentals, but because we are not bound by on-chain consensus in this off-chain model, actually introduce opcodes and changes to Bitcoin that a lot of people have been clamoring for years, really, and therefore we're able to do things like covenant and introduce things like introspection and more complex or like mathematical structure where we unlock the ability to use UTXOs in a Bitcoin kind of like transaction syntax way, but in a much more powerful where everything from loans, from AMMs, the type of things that you'd find on Ethereum, we're able to closely replicate while preserving sort of like the self custody guarantees that Bitcoin typically offers.